Well, this is my third book, Met Stories I Only Tell My Friends. Um, so many books have been written about that 69 Met team. I really believe more books have been written about that individual team than any sports team in history. And, I figured I'm not going to be a great novel writer and I'm not going to write love stories, but I wanted to do another book after the first two. And I just was thinking of things to write about, and I was told about a book that former President Dwight Eisenhower wrote way back in the 50s called At Ease, Stories I Tell My Friends. I looked through it, and it was interesting, and I said, look, there's some stories that haven't been told about not only the Mets, but my career on and off the field, but maybe I could stretch out some of the stories that have already been told. And that really is how the book came about. It's really a kind of a it's not a book where you're going to find some stuff that you think shouldn't be written about anybody, any teammates, anything like that. It's really about my experiences and some of the off the field and on the field things that I shared with the teammates and my roommate Kenny Boswell. But that's really how the book came about, and it's been great. People really enjoy some of these stories. Some of them are, most of them are pretty light stories. Some of them are a little bit more serious, but it's really about my experiences, and it gives me a chance now to come to places and meet people and talk about it. That 69 Met team is now 56 years, and it's really going to live forever. It's one of the two teams, I believe, in the history of baseball that people will talk about forever, the other being the 27 Yankees and with Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth, and that'll be 100 years in 2027. The 69 Mets will always be special. They'll always bring back memories to everybody. And it's interesting. Well, it's interesting because I meet people who weren't even born who know about it from their parents or their grandparents. That team meant so much to so many people. And those people who were around at the time passed on the legacy of that team. Over the years, I've had so many people tell me they were at the last game when we won the World Series at Shea Stadium. Probably 100,000 people, but I realized 50,000 people is what the ballpark held, 52 or 53. So either they were or they weren't there. It doesn't make any difference. If they think they were there, that's fine with me. So yeah, I just know that when I meet people and tell them that I played for the 69 Mets, or the 69 Mets, or they know me or they recognize the name, their youth comes back to them, and so does mine. I do a lot of speaking engagements and talking to some groups and some older people, and when I talk about my experiences and being on that team and some of the stories that they have heard before, or maybe they haven't heard yet, their youth comes back, and it makes them think about when their parents took them to the games when they were young, and then about when they took their kids to the games or their grandkids to the game. And so that team is always going to have special meaning, not only for me, but for everybody that's been around and knows about the 69 Mets or heard stories about that team. And so for me, it's always great to do these kind of things, these signings, and meet people. And I realize that people come up, and whether they buy a book or they buy a photo or they buy this or they buy that, or they don't, it doesn't make any difference. But every one of them's got a story. Every one of them was at a game, was at an event that reminds them about that year. And for me, it's wonderful because I still get a chance to talk about that team.
What was it like the moment you became a world champion?
Well, here's the ring right here. I wear it. I love showing it to people. I love putting it on kids' fingers so they can, their parents can take the photos of it. It's always going to be very special to me. But the moment we won was for all of us who, and especially for the guys who were there in the early years, who went through some really dark times with that team, and they were known as the lovable losers. And what made our championship so important and so inspiring is that where we came from before. Now, I wasn't there in those early years. The years they were losing 100 games, 120 games. But I was there the year before when we lost, we finished ninth, a half game out of last place. Nobody thought we were going to do anything different in 1969. But we proved everybody wrong. And for all of us who were there at that time, winning became so much more important because where we came from. And I think you have to put it in the context of what was going on in the world at the time. You know, we're in a world that's upside down now, but back in the late 60s, and the war in Vietnam was tearing this country apart. And New York City was going under socially, financially, spiritually, morally. Everything was going wrong. And what we did, and the Jets did, winning the Super Bowl in January, and us in winning the World Series in October, and the Knicks winning the NBA championship in May of '70, we made people forget about all their problems for a brief period of time. And they have passed that on from generation to generation, and I still get people just coming up to me and say thank you. Vietnam veterans saying thank you. They were in the worst place in the world, but we made them forget about that for a few minutes. And I think putting that in the context of where the team came from and where we came from the year before and what was going on in the city and the world at the time just made all of us who are part of those three teams, and particularly the New York Mets, going to be special to people for years gone by.
The legendary Tom Seaver, just talk about how good a pitcher he was.
Well, I got the chance to see Tom playing against him when I came over when I was with the Cincinnati Reds, and playing with him. And I can only tell you that my experiences with him, watching him pitch and just seeing him work hitters, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to be known as one of the greatest pitchers ever to pitch in the major leagues. It's really funny. I'll tell you an interesting story, which I wrote about in this Met Stories book. Was I faced him in 1967, his first year. My first year was '68 with the Mets, so it's my last year with the Reds. Ninth inning, he's pitching a 7-0 shutout at Shea, and I hit a 3-run home run in the ninth inning with 2 outs. Made the score 7-3, meaningless home run at the time. And the next spring, I'm with the Mets, and I'm going around saying hello to some people, just introducing myself, and I went up to him and I said, "Tom, hi, it's Art." And he said, "I know who you are." He says, "I remember that June day when I was pitching that shutout, and you hit that 3-run home run." And he said, "I'll tell you what, we'll talk about it today, but we're never going to talk about it again." And we never did. But again, it was a meaningless home run in terms of him winning the game. But I got a chance to see greatness working all the time, and I really only saw him get hit hard a few times. He was a surgeon on the mound, for lack of a better word, and along with him and Koosman and Gentry and Ryan and McGraw, we had a great pitching staff. But Tom was in a class by himself, and 311 wins, if I'm not mistaken. So many complete games, so many shutouts. I mean, it was just he was an expert pitcher, and I think, like I said, history will show he's one of the greatest pitchers ever. One of the questions I get all the time now is, "Don't you wish you were playing now, making all the money?" And my first reaction is, of course I wish I was playing now, but the reality of it, I wouldn't trade it for this World Series ring. And just as important is I got a chance to play with and against the greatest conglomerate of players in the history of the game, from the early mid-'60s to '70s. I got a chance to play against Mays, Aaron Clemente, Stargell, McCovey, Billy Williams, Johnny Bench, Frank. I came up with Frank Robinson, Pete Rose, Tony Perez, all the Koufax, Drysdale, Marriage. I can go down the list with all the great pitchers. So for me to be able to play with and against those guys was very, very special. Aaron, you know, you play against Mays and you say, who's better than Mays? And you go to Atlanta and you'd see Aaron play and say, who's better than Aaron? And you go to Pittsburgh and you see Clemente and you say, who's better than Clemente? But God, as a young player and having a chance to play with those great players and against those great players, it was very, very special. I've got wonderful memories, and to watch Aaron play, in particular, watch him. I don't think anybody was better than Mays, but Henry was right there, and Hank was just a great hitter. I used to glare at him when he was taking batting practice. I would focus my eyes on watching him swing. And one of the greatest moments in my life was I was playing for a space of the game, and he got down to first base. And first base was great because you got a chance to say hello to the opposition. And we had fraternizing rules back then. And I said, he got down to first, and I said, Hank, hi, how are you? And he actually answered me, and he said, I'm fine. I said, Hank, I tell you, you have a great swing. I really love watching you hit and take batting practice. He said, thanks, you got a great swing too. He said that to me. I don't know if he was just kidding or what, but that was one of the best moments in my life. And I said to him, how does it feel knowing you're going to get 2 or 3 hits every day? Because to me, it looked like he was getting 2 or 3 hits every game. He wasn't, but that's what I saw. And he said, I don't know if I'm going to get 2 or 3 today, but if I don't get him today, I'm going to get him tomorrow. So all that told me was he never worried about going 0 for 4, like we had to worry about that. So just to answer your question, again, one of the greatest of all time, just watching him hit, and we were very lucky to beat them in the playoffs. We swept them in 3 games, and then we beat an incredible Baltimore Oriole team in the World Series. It even made our World Series victory even that much better because of beating that great Baltimore Oriole team.